Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another speed build for the Disney Save. Today we are in Willow Creek working on kind of a renovation of the Bouff mansion from Princess and the Frog. This is a mansion that I have done before. If you didn't see my previous video where I did a renovation of Princess Tiana's mansion, I recommend you go check that one out first, just because it explains a lot of like why I'm here, why we're in Willow Creek. I have done this world for the Disney Save before and I did a lot of explaining what the plan is going to be for the save file moving forward. And I don't want to have to keep reiterating this throughout videos, so I'm just going to recommend go ahead and watch that video first so that you can see kind of what the plan is. But to make a really long story short, this mansion definitely needed a redo. And I'm calling this a renovation, but it is, again, more of just like a complete redo overhaul. And I actually said in the previous video that I was actually going to attempt to do a true renovation for this mansion, because there were things about it that I did like. One of the biggest problems, I think, was that it was just way too big. I think it was maybe 4 stories and it had so many extra bedrooms. It had this absolutely massive kitchen that a lot of the characters, or I should say the only 2 characters that live in this household, are Lottie LaBeouf and her dad, Big Daddy. And they are not going to use a kitchen. Let's be so honest. I think they would have a sense of lavishness to their home, and I did re-watch Princess and the Frog to get some floor plan ideas, colors, palette options, really try to master this on my second attempt here. So I had a lot of knowledge going into this, but one thing I realized is that at the end of the day, this is a mansion. It is supposed to be extremely grand. It is supposed to be probably, if not the biggest, most impressive house on the block, if not in all of New Orleans. Like, this is absolutely massive. If you go back and watch the movie, when they show pictures of it, it's crazy big, and it doesn't make any sense why it would be that big considering the family that lives here ultimately. But all of that being said, the version I built, still crazy too big. Too long. The colors were a little bit off about it as well. I've had a lot of issues, and we're going to go into all of that today regarding this mansion because it's actually really interesting now that I've done so much research on it, trying to figure out like how this mansion actually looks and recreating it to the best of my ability. The Bouff Mansion 2.0, much better. You guys are going to absolutely love this because I do. I think this is one of, if not my best mansion that I've ever built. The colors in it are pristine. It's something that is like a little bit timeless but has that southern charm as well in the decor, in the architecture. You can see a lot of like Lottie's influence in the home and the choices in the coloration as well. The only 2 Sims that live here are Big Daddy, there is a cat and a dog, and then there is Lottie LaBeouf. And I feel like she would just take over Big Daddy's life. Like, he would totally just make decisions for this house based on her. He would let her put pink flowers everywhere. He would have that influence of like her childlike nature in some of the whimsical flowers of the decor and stuff like that. So there is a bit of Lottie here, but in my previous mansion, it was overboard. There was so much pink, there was so much gold. Even the exterior of the home was overwhelmingly pink and white in a way that was just ultimately inaccurate. So although the shape of my original mansion was okay, it was like kind of similar to the one I'm building in today's video, it wasn't 100% what it could be. And I'm really excited that I took the opportunity to come back and redo this. This has been on my list to fix for a very long time. Going into the build, I was really going to do a full renovation. I was going to try to keep the shape of the building, maybe just change some of the room sizes, squeeze it down a little bit. The big goal really was to expand the backyard, the patio, that party scene that takes place here early on in the movie, have lots of space in the backyard for that, maybe do a guest house, maybe do some of the scenes under the gazebo that Lottie has with fake Naveen, and just have room in the backyard area, more importantly than making this like absolutely massive house. I think what I ended up accomplishing is somewhere in the middle. I definitely did expand the garden and the backyard area, but the house did end up being bigger than what I intended going in. And obviously, I started from scratch because the more I looked at it, the more I was like, this is actually just going to be a little bit of a nightmare to try to adjust everything. And I don't think it was going to be ultimately very fun to watch either. So I just started from scratch, and I'm really glad that I did so because this ended up being an actually very complicated build with all of the platforms, the fencing, the balconies, the spandrels, the columns. It's just a lot. The game glitches, it freaks out, it wants to change things, and you'll see a little bit bit of that in today's video, like when I'm changing parameters for a room, it will change the outside spandrels, or if I want to add a platform to the interior of this home, it it deletes fencing on the outside. It's a massive build. So it just gets very complicated with the building, and it's annoying. I have to go back and fix things constantly and readjust, and there are still little bits that you're gonna see of the home, like especially in the fencing areas on some of the balconies and things, and the addition of some of the round platforms as well to kind of curve off on the edges of walls, and the big round column that we have in the front of the home. It's a lot for the game. It kind of freaks out at certain portions, so there's a lot of like going back, fixing and adjusting. And I also was just trying to get this perfect. I do not want to come back to this world. I want Willow Creek to be so complete by the end of all of this work and never feel the need to come back and touch anything. I do feel I am a much better builder now than when I first built this mansion. This might have been my second build ever for the Disney save, and considering how complicated it is and how big it is, it was a lot for me to take on. Not as like a novice builder, I definitely knew what I was doing, but even then I have just grown so much compared to now. Okay, let's get into some of the details on why this is actually such a complicated mansion to make. I would say if you are a huge Princess and the Frog fan, maybe you have already noticed this. This might be the Disney house that has the most inconsistencies in the artwork in the movie, as well as like post-movie, anything that they've released about this mansion that comes from books, video games especially. It is so wildly inconsistent that it became annoying. So when I first started the mansion, I was actually using a reference from Disney Dreamlight Valley. I love using Disney Dreamlight Valley references because they are making 3D models that are more simplified to put into a video game, and then they're easier for me to copy over, and it usually has all of the important pieces that you would want to make sure that you're being accurate to the build. So they added this house into the game as a premium item, DLC skin basically, and when I saw it, I was like, perfect, we'll just use that and that's gonna be great, and now I have a really good 3D official reference to go off of. But the more I looked at it, the more I just thought, this doesn't look right. There are certain things about that version I was looking at that are missing. And so what Dreamlight Valley actually did, they completely cut off the left and right side of this house and just used the middle part. So that entire round patio to the right of the home and that bump out that is going to end up being the kitchen and Big Daddy LaBeouf's bedroom on the left side of the home if you're facing the front are missing from that version. So that just wasn't going to do. And I was using it initially and then I completely tossed it to the side. It does end up being useful for color. One of the things about Princess and the Frog is that it has this like color grade over it that is very beautiful, whimsical, sunset kind of inspired, but it makes it hard to tell what certain colors are truly there. So the few times that you do see this house in the film, it looks almost pink, and I think that's why I went for the pink initially when building the home. And I just thought, well, of course Lottie would love a beautiful pink mansion. Of course Big Daddy would paint it pink for her if that's something that she wanted. But every time you see the home, it's either nighttime or the sun is just setting. And I think what you're actually seeing is just the sun setting over or in front of the home. And it creates this pinky, orangey, and yellowy glow across the house that could be interpreted as pink, but it is accurately not. It's actually a yellow home, which did make me reflect on my previous house for Princess Tiana and me saying that I was building this home for her and it's a new version of her home, because I believe that when you ride Tiana's Bayou Adventure, you do go kind of past a home on the ride, and I interpreted it as Tiana's home because of the way that the scene is done, and I'm familiar enough with Lottie's mansion here that I didn't feel like the two were similar at all. And in retrospect, I think that the ride is actually also the LaBeouf mansion, but they changed it so much on the ride that it's almost indistinguishable from the version that is shown in the film, and therefore I didn't recognize it. So weirdly enough, I think history has kind of repeated itself. When I built the original Tiana's mansion, I accidentally used the LaBeouf mansion as reference to build it, and so I kind of built the same mansion twice but in different colors, and then it was for two different characters, and then I just basically did that again. I can't find any 100% accurate information on this, but I think based off of all of the stuff that I've looked at and all of the research I've done, it's very, very likely that the ride is also featuring the LaBeouf mansion, but they changed it so much for no reason that it looked so different enough that I was confident it was just a different house, and therefore has to be Tiana's home, because who else would it be if the ride is about her? All that to say, it works out because I built a very film accurate version of the LaBeouf mansion for today's build and for what will exist in the Disney save for the rest of time. And the mansion that Tiana got, although very much inspired by the LaBeouf mansion, that does kind of make sense in a way, because it's possible that the same architect, the same group of people in the area would have made the mansion, or obviously we're going off of similar styles, similar places on Earth, so it would have like a similar look between the two mansions. They are not similar at the end of the day. They are different enough. They are colored very differently, especially on the interior. I go with a completely different color palette on today's mansion, as you're going to see momentarily. The roofs are very, very different. This one has multiple patios. It has the really large one off to the right-hand side that Tiana's does not have. And they end up being so drastically different from one another that I am happy to have both versions, and I feel like both versions really suit the characters that go inside of each home. So it all works out at the end of the day. Now, moving on to the next thing I did, which was heavily research the film. I pulled as many references of the mansion up as possible. I rewatched pretty much all of the scenes that take place in front of, near, beginning of the movie, end of the movie, that have to do with this mansion to get as much information as possible. And that's really when I noticed that even Disney itself is just wildly inconsistent with how they did the artwork for the LaBeouf mansion. It's actually crazy. I really do think that this might be one of the most egregious examples. There are sometimes certain sides of the home that are just missing in certain scenes. There are additional backyard areas. You find out that there is a guest house in the backyard if you look really closely, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more later regarding the guest house. But basically, the front of the home and the back of the home, the shapes look extremely different from one another. The colors are different. And more specifically, something that actually created a really big issue is the fact that the characters are seen going out onto balconies. And you're going to remember, most importantly, Princess Tiana and her blue dress at the party scene going out onto a balcony. That balcony is attached to Lottie's bedroom, and it doesn't make any sense. And this is going to be kind of hard to explain, so you're probably just going to have to take my word for it. But when you look at the home, you realize that that balcony is probably on the back side of the home, but the bedroom shouldn't be facing the back courtyard because she's not looking out. Tiana is not looking out over the back courtyard where the party is taking place. It kind of looks like she's on the side of the home, but then there shouldn't be a balcony there. I guess that's the best way I can explain it. Basically, what happened was the floor plan was extremely hard to figure out for this. I did the entire exterior, I did the backyard, and then when I went to do the floor plan, it ended up taking me almost an entire day to figure out a way to lay out this floor plan that really works well and keeps some accuracy and consistency to things that are shown in the film, but I did have to give some of it up. So the biggest example being when the film first starts, they zoom into this house and they go through a window and you end up in Lottie's bedroom and you see the girls, they're little and they're doing a scene with Eudora. She's reading them a storybook, and that's kind of how the movie begins. The window that they go through is actually on that round princessy sort of column that's at the front of the home, and that goes straight into Lottie's bedroom. So you would say, okay, perfect. We now know at least where part of Lottie's bedroom is in the home, and I can work out a floor plan based on that, which is kind of where I started. But the more I was drawing and redrawing and trying to figure out a way to work that side of the home into her bedroom, I realized that if I did that, she wasn't going to get a balcony, or at least not one of those like square balconies, and definitely not the one that Tiana walks out onto. Because essentially what would have happened, the second floor is the bedroom floor. That's where Eli's bedroom ended up being. That's where Lottie's room is. And there's also a guest room on this floor. Her bedroom alone would have basically been the entire right side of the house, because her bedroom would have had to span from the front side of the home with that round column all the way to the back balcony. And so the right side second floor all would have had to be Lottie's bedroom, which might be true if you think about how extravagant her bedroom was in the movie. And I have no doubt that she has a massive bedroom, but this would be really, really drastic realistic, like way too much. And it also would mean, if you see on the right hand side of the home this like round green bump out balcony that I've done, that would have all been a part of her bedroom as well. There would have been no way to basically cut that off and do a hallway or something, or her room would have been like very weirdly L-shaped. I hope what I'm saying is making sense to you, but basically they showed her room taking up two entirely different sides of the house. So I opted, after a lot of trial and error, and after the stairs being one of the bigger issues, of course, because you have to make sure that the stairs are coming up into hallways and they're popping up in places that make sense and they're kind of like off of the communal areas of the home. I opted to do Lottie's bedroom off of the balcony, the main one off of the back patio that you see Princess Tiana on, and that created a much better opportunity for the floor plan, and it made more sense to me. The other round bit at the front of the home, that's going to end up being a conservatory that we're going to decorate later on in the video. And unfortunately for me, when trying to figure this all out, sometimes something I'll do is just like Google floor plans. Like the Lilo and Stitch house floor plan comes up as a great example because it's been done so many times and in so many different forms that it is available, and there are different drawings and things that were like canon information. So it's really easy to see and find, and that's all good and dandy. So I thought maybe I can find one for this home. Not the case. There isn't really one out there, probably because of the inconsistencies with that sort of information. And the only other interior shots that we get of this home is a hallway that Tiana and Eudora are walking out of when they are leaving Lottie's room in the beginning of the movie. The many shots in Lottie's bedroom, both at the beginning when she's a little bit younger and it's kind of decorated a little bit differently with toys and things, and then as she ages there is a redecoration of the room, so there's two versions of that. And then Naveen is staying, or I should say fake Naveen, if you've seen the movie, is staying at this home. And at first I thought he was actually staying in the main house itself, but it turns out he is staying in a guest house that is shown so briefly that you could miss it. In the movie, there's a guest house on the property and he's actually staying in that, but it was cool to have that as reference because I basically decorated one of the guest bedrooms in this home based on that bedroom that is shown in the movie. I did not include the guest house. I wanted more room for that outdoor party patio scene, and obviously in the film it's so much bigger and more grand, and there is like layers and layers to the patio, and they have this house presumably on a very large plot of land that goes down to a river with a gazebo and everything. Just so much that I was never going to be able to bring into this build. I decided I wasn't going to take up space from the garden to make a guest house when the house itself is already large enough, if not too large, for the Sims that live here. And if you wanted to expand this home and really play with the little buffs and have Lottie get married and maybe she inherits this home and she has children of her own, there is so much room to grow into this home that the guest house was just not necessary. It ends up being a 5-bedroom total, and 2 of those rooms are definitely on the smaller side. They're located on the top floor and they're going to be decorated kind of as like butler and maid suites. I think that when I put these guys into the Disney save, I always felt like it was really important that they had all of the hireable services. So they have a butler, a maid, a gardener, everything that you can basically have. And I don't believe that those Sims can always stay and like become a part of your family necessarily, but I think some of them might have that option, particularly the butler. You can like basically ask them if they want to be a live-in butler or something to that regard. I haven't done it in a very long time, so this is kind of all off the cuff. But regardless of the game's ability to give you that, it's not uncommon for me to add additional bedrooms, either for the growth aspect, the family growing aspect, or for playability if you wanted to add more servant characters in yourself. And if you think about some of the castles and things that I've previously done, you want to have more bedrooms than just what the characters can take up, because it's supposed to be a castle or a mansion and just larger than probably like a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom home. Pretty much everybody gets their own bathroom. There are common bathrooms, multiple seating rooms, dining room, large kitchen, but not as large as the last one. There is a conservatory, a library, an office, a lot here. So we're going to go through, decorate basically everything in today's video. I kept in a lot of the footage, so as you can see, see it is a little bit of a long one, but mansions always are. With Tiana's mansion, I used a lot of darker wood tones. I also used some of the more Western inspired packs, being Strangerville and the Horses pack. Louisiana itself, you can get away with that in the architecture and the design. But for this home, you're going to notice right away that I went with a different color choice immediately. The lighter wood tones, the pops of gold, the warmer wooden furniture, cream, stripes, all of that, very drastically different than Tiana's. The reason being, and honestly, I probably wouldn't have made this choice if I didn't have the reference from the film, but you do get to see a few bedrooms, like I mentioned, and in particular, you get to see a hallway that is very, very heavily decorated. You can see the choice of florals that would have been picked for this home. It's very much spring, light colors, pastels, nothing too bold at all. You can see that the wallpaper is pretty much identical to the cream striped wallpaper that I've chosen for the majority of the home here, with the white paneling on the bottom and the shades and variations in like the tan color. That's almost identical to the one that is shown in the movie, so I used it for all of the hallways, the common areas, the kitchen, the dining, pretty much all of the places where multiple people would be, like not a bedroom, not the gentleman's room, not the conservatory. Those kind of have a different vibe. You can also see from that hallway scene that the furniture in the hallway is a warmer wood tone, and the floors are also a warmer wood tone, which is a little bit surprising. It's elegant, it's very pretty, it's a change of pace enough that I was excited to take this on. It means that I ended up using a lot of base game furniture, but I also really like the vintagey sort of packs, the 20s and 30s inspired packs in particular, and I used a ton of the storybook kit, that new like children's room kit that's inspired by the circus and has that vintagey element to it in this house, from the chandeliers, Lottie's bedroom. A lot of the furniture from that pack has like gold elements to it on the trimming, and it has more carvings, more vintage inspired look and detail to the pieces, so it was perfect for this house. You can see that there's paintings around, there are candelabras, there are candles on the wall. It's even a little bit more old school than Tiana's home is, because in Tiana's home I used just regular lamps, but this one is mostly lit by candles on the wall and then these gorgeous elegant chandeliers in the center of rooms. And in particular, Lottie's room has a specific like flower chandelier that I wasn't able to fully replicate. We'll talk more about her room when we go upstairs. Her room is much different than a lot of the home ends up being, but based on that furniture, I was also able to kind of tell what the vibe was for everything else. And with mansions, some things, again, I kind of talked about this in the Tiana mansion video, so I hope it's not too repetitive, but I do have like some rules. I try to keep everything very even. I try to think that for the most part, it is going to look a little bit more like it comes out of a magazine, especially for this home, whereas with Tiana's mansion, I tried to put a lot of personality into that house. I feel like this one would have less personality. It would be more decorated, cleaned, catered to by a separate group of people than the characters that actually live here. So there's not as much influence of the character's personality in like the home decor as much as that comes out in each individual's bedroom. There are pictures of Eli LaBeouf pretty much everywhere. There was this painting, as you can see in the dining room, that kind of resembled him, maybe in his younger years, that I put in a few places around the home. He has a little bit of like a, not conceited, but I guess sort of self-absorbed-ish vibe. Not completely, but you get the idea. He might hang up a couple of paintings of himself around his house. I try to establish a core group of furniture items that I'm going to be using, typically based on a common space. So for this mansion, I started with the dining room, and I knew that that was going to help me basically pick out everything from chairs to wood tones, the table, what florals I was going to be using, what types of paintings, the chandeliers, and all of that stuff that is going to be a little bit repetitive throughout the house, but it's in an attempt to make everything match as much as possible and give that grand feeling that a mansion typically has. I was surprised actually to use quite a bit of the life and death pack stuff in this build. I'm not quite sure when that pack will come up, but I felt like a lot of it had detailing, especially in the wood grains and the wood textures of the home. I used all of the kitchen stuff for this house, and some of the little like shelves and hallway benches and things come from that pack also. It provided a level of detail that I was looking for, but I do have to say, with that pack, you have to be a little bit careful. Something that was kind of aggravating is that it has this vintage inspiration and this like European inspiration in a lot of the details on the pieces, but then you'll look at it and you'll look at like the details that are carved into the wood and it'll be a skull. And I can't have that in the LaBeouf mansion. So some of the pieces were really perfect, but then it would just have like skulls in the wallpaper and in the furniture itself. And I know that that's like because the pack is inspired by ghosts and it has this occult spooky nature to the whole thing, but it made it sort of unusable for this unless it had like a different swatch that didn't have something like that on it, which some of the pieces do and some of them do not. And again, because Princess and the Frog takes place in the 1920s, there is an attempt to use furniture items that make sense per the time period. There are no TVs in the entire house. There is one computer, but I'm using that classic typewriter computer from the Cottage Living pack that I pretty much overuse for all of these older sort of movies where the typewriter makes sense, but a full-blown computer does not. And I think Eli LaBeouf's previous job in the save was either political or possibly business, but either way, I always felt like he needed to have an office. And with the office, you can just do like a book and a quill, but that's not necessarily needed for this movie. We are a little bit further in time than that. So the typewriter becomes appropriate. I think I actually have recently changed his career to being the aspiration that comes with owning and operating property management from For Rent. The way he is sort of written into the save, I always intended that he would own chunks of New Orleans or Willow Creek and sort of be the backer for lots of local operations, and his money would be very much invested in the community, and that is how he is like kind of locally known. So when they added in that newer aspiration to be like a property manager, I thought that that made a lot of sense for him. I don't really know what his job is specifically. He does mention to one other character in the movie, I caught a line where he says something about constituents, so it makes me think that he could possibly be in the political sphere, but he's also speaking to someone else about their constituents, so I don't know if that's just him having it in with the mayor or the local governor or whatever it is. Either way, he's a very popular man. He is definitely running some kind of a business. You may be able to interpret that however you personally wish, but I gave him one of the newer aspirations in an attempt to use it, as I try to like use pretty much everything from the game in different ways if I can find ways to fill in the blanks and to do so. Now for Eli LaBeouf, I wanted to give him a place in the home that the concept of like a gentleman's room has come up for me recently, and I have to be honest, it's a little bit inspired by Bridgerton, and I know that we're obviously speaking about very, very drastic time periods here, but I actually googled before I built this mansion, when did gentlemen's rooms become not so prevalent? And I guess you could argue in a sense that they are still prevalent, they're just called different things. Like, it's the idea of a man cave, and that could sort of be, I guess, the modern interpretation of this idea. But back in the day, you used to have these things called gentlemen's rooms, and they were rooms where men would come and be able to have privacy, drink, work out business things, and have a space that they could go to that was a little bit more of a common area, like not an office, not so private, not a library. And also for a time period, women were not allowed in these rooms. So I felt like he needed something like that. It actually makes sense organically for the time period. It would be getting like almost phased out within the next couple of decades is what I was reading. And this was not shown in the film, but I'm trying to figure out how to use the space here in ways that really make sense. And something that I utilized in the Tiana mansion was like closing off spaces, not doing these big open archways, these modern concepts. All of the rooms are dedicated closed off spaces that serve one purpose. So you could call this a bar, also you could call this a lounge. It can be whatever you want it to be. But essentially, I wanted a room that's completely different in tone. Like you can see I went for the darker wood tones, the red lighting, the deeper sort of look to the room. And in the center of the room, you will typically have some kind of a game. And I would preferably have a billiards table there, pool. But we don't have that in the game. Can you believe it? I know the kit that is coming out any day now. That's like the billiards kit. It's coming. Just hold your breath because I know it's coming any day now. But we do have foosball. So I slapped the foosball table right in the center of the room there. You also still could put like the poker gambling tables in the room, but I just felt like I wanted something that took up a little bit more space. I used the bar backing from Ravenwood as well as the vintage glamour one tile globe bar that fit really well into this room. If I had a little bit more space, I'd do like the full bar, but it gets the point across. And then just some general seating, some decor that's like more masculine inspired, if you will, like a fish on the wall and pictures of, I don't know, like travels, horses, paintings that are a little bit more masculine and tuned, maybe things that are like specific to Eli LaBeouf and like his travels, his lifetime as well. So it gives this look of the room that's like very, very different than the rest of the house. Like when you look at the overhead view of the floor plan, it stands out because it's so tonally different and darker and just using like a completely different set of colors, but it still really matches because it's all the same furniture that I've used in the other rooms and the same curtains and everything, but I just used a darker color swatch. So it really still fits the vibe of the mansion. And that ends up being one of the ways that Eli sort of inspires the home and gives some personality, but it's in a more private quarters. He also ends up getting basically like a full library and office on the third floor of the mansion, which is going to be one of the last things that we do in the video. I also did include, and I normally cut this kind of stuff, but some bathroom decoration. I basically only included these two common floor bathrooms so that you can see what they're going to look like throughout the home. There are more than just these two. These two are kind of like on the bottom floor, open to the public, right next to what ends up being in a moment here, the ballroom. So when you have guests over, you have lots of space for these types of things. I'm not going to keep putting all the footage for that in the video because basically I use the same set of furniture, same color, same wallpaper all throughout the home, and they all match aesthetically. As we transition into this round bump out room that's on the right side of the home if you're facing the front, something kind of interesting about this is again the inconsistency with whether or not this room actually exists. If you watch the movie, you're going to see that this room is definitely there in certain scenes because you can see all of the windows on that side of the home and you can see that it's round. In the beginning of the movie, I actually built it as square because I was confused, and if you saw all of my references, you would understand why, but I also had a different reference that basically showed that this was more of, it wasn't even there basically, and Sims could walk through it, underneath it. It might have been a car park, it might have been a awning that you could put a car underneath, or some kind of a passageway to the backyard, and it basically just would have been the patio balcony upstairs without this enclosed space underneath it. And I also think that that might be shown in the film at one point as well, or at least implied that it's there, but then it reappears at a different part in the movie. So again, I had to figure out like what is important here, what should I include, what is going to be like something that people kind of remember. And obviously you never get to see this space on the interior, so it isn't something that's going to immediately come up in people's memories. But I felt like I wanted to add to the grandness of this house, and one of the ways to utilize that space would most definitely be to do a ballroom. The LaBeoufs clearly love to throw a party, they entertain, they probably have guests over or do parties on a somewhat frequent basis. So if the weather is not cooperating and you can't use that entire outdoor patio space on the backside of the home, you need an indoor space to be able to pull something off. I also don't get to build ballrooms super often. You would think that they come up more than they do in Disney movies, but there's just such a wide array of like houses that I'm building. It doesn't come up super often. One of the last ones that I probably built was back in Henford on Bagley for the Beauty and the Beast mansion. And honestly, that one doesn't compare in size to this one because I had so much other priorities, so many other things to do when building that mansion. I couldn't really give the time and the space to that ballroom, although important, and I would love to go back and maybe see if I can adjust it a little bit. I organically already kind of had the space here to do something really grand, and it comes out so beautiful. Those new like standing almost candelabra inspired floor lights that look a little more vintage are from Life and Death. I do use them a little bit here and there throughout the home, and they have light bulbs on the ends instead of candles. I wish that it was candles because it would work out a lot better for like the things that I want to do with it, but it was too beautiful and too almost correct to pass up. And speaking of almost correct, I want to say there's quite a few things in this house that are like almost there. One of the big things being like the coloring with the outdoor fences and the columns that I've chosen. You might think when you look at it that I've chosen some strange picks. The columns that are on the exterior of the home, those green ones that are all over the balconies, I think is from the university pack. A lot of the stuff from that pack has kind of an Art Deco inspiration. So on first glance, it might feel a little bit incorrect, effect. And then I paired it with the wrought iron Strangerville green fencing. It was really tough to pick things for this. None of them were perfectly accurate. There's a very, very specific way that balconies, especially in New Orleans, are done. And we don't have the correct pieces in the game, including that classic green color. And more importantly, the columns are almost not really columns. They are see-through. They are iron. They have intricate woven, usually floral sort of designs that make up or represent the idea of a column that's kind of there for support, but there is holes in them. There is like cutouts in the actual design, and they're not solid columns, but we don't really have anything like that. So I have to replace it with a column, with something that's like as close as possible. And I wanted to pick pieces that had detail to them. So even though that doesn't seem like a good pick as far as like the Art Deco inspiration of the pack, it is one of the packs that comes with like intricacy in the pieces. And that is why that decision is made. Now, as we move into Lottie's bedroom, this is the second floor of the home. I showed a lot of the hallways and the common areas being decorated on the bottom floor, so I'm not going to include as much of that from this point forward. But this second floor is all of the bedrooms, and it's also the conservatory. So we have Eli LaBeouf's room that ends up being the one right above the dining room. That's going to come shortly here. And then Lottie's room, covered head to toe in pink, shown very much in the film. You have lots of different references to go off of to get this room right. One of the big things being she has a platformed, beautiful princess bed. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, Lottie in the beginning has lots of things. She's a little spoiled. She's got a lot of toys. She collects princess stuff. You can see the dolls and the bears and all of her toys on like a shelf next to her bed in the background. And they all have little crowns on and princess hats and things like that. She loves fairy tales. She clearly loves like castles and stories and the whimsical nature of like storybooks and things like that as well. So it's very prevalent in her bedroom, in the decor. She has like a castle dollhouse on the floor. She has a little set of bears that are having a tea party. But as she ages, and because Lottie in the save file is a full-grown adult, and most of the story takes place when they are adults, this is actually the more adult version of her bedroom. And it does change a little bit. You can see in the background, even when the changes are made, that those toys and things that were there earlier in the movie have just been kind of moved, maybe pushed to the side a little bit, replaced or kind of covered with some things that are probably going to be more appropriate for her age. She's into makeup, fashion, clothing. She likes her vanity. She likes jewelry. Those things that you can expect that she would get into sort of as she ages. But that childlike inspiration is still in her bedroom. You can see her toys around. You can see some of those things that just never really left her space. So even though she is probably in her early 20s, maybe late teens, 18, 19, 20, somewhere in there, I still wanted her to have some of those things in her room. So she has a couple of shelves where I have moved some of her princess dolls, and then she has one of those baskets that again is from that storybook kit that's filled with stuffed animals and comes in like the beautiful pink color that works really well, like that bubblegum lighter pastel pink that is matchy and like definitely takes over her room. I liked that kit especially for this because it had a lot of gold trimming on the pieces, which was exactly what was shown in the movie. And I gave her one of those changing dividers because that is also shown in the film. Tiana actually gets changed behind one of those, but behind it I stuck one of those pieces from that storybook kit again. So it might have been like a furniture piece she had in her childhood that she never really got rid of because she hasn't fully outgrown like the concepts of that, if you will, which is not really a bad thing. I don't mean to say that to be a bad thing at all. I find that I'm a little bit like that myself. I love the whimsical nature, the princess stories, the romance of it all. She kind of hasn't like fully grown up in the same way that Tiana had to, but it's okay. It's just a different way of growing up. She wants to have her fairy tale ending, and that's like very prevalent in the story as well. She thinks she's going to find a prince. She thinks she's going to find some equivalent of like a Prince Charming, and he's going to whisk her off her feet, and she's going to have this big romantic moment, and all of that very much takes over her character because she has this personality of like, everything that I want in life will come to me. It will find me if I just want it hard enough, which is, it doesn't create conflict between her and Tiana, which I kind of like about the story, by the way. I think it's nice to see like two best friend characters that are depicted and they don't really have any disagreements, even though they are so different from one another. They were raised so differently. They have very different personalities. personalities, they still get along so charmingly so. And I think a common plot point in Disney films is to have those sort of like opposite characters immediately just conflicting, or as the characters would have aged and they got along when they were younger, but now they're older and life has finally found them, they don't get along as well. But that's not the story with Princess and the Frog, and they don't spend a lot of time focusing on Lottie or any of that, and I think that's all a great thing. They also don't do the thing where Lottie kind of hates Tiana for basically stealing her man at the end of the movie. She never really stole Naveen because the person that Lottie was getting to know as Naveen was not Naveen, but she didn't know that. Like, Lottie doesn't know that until I don't think the end of the movie. So there might have been like a subplot where Lottie is like, I cannot believe that you stole my Prince Charming, but she never gets upset at Tiana. She always just wants the best things for her, and I think it's really nice to see that kind of a dynamic. In my original version of Lottie's bedroom, I really went for it with the vintage glamour stuff and the get famous stuff, and her room was so big. You entered into it and you basically had like this huge pink bedroom, giant vanity, closet, and then she had a walk-through hallway that went off to her own bathroom, and then if you kept going, she had a sitting room slash closet. And although I think the extravagance of having all that makes a lot of sense for her character, it was too much. Like, the amount that I did, she didn't need all that. Even having this much, considering the time period of the film, would have been a lot. And she has her own ensuite bathroom. She has a ton of space in here. You could definitely do a lot more with this if you wanted to like use some CC princess dolls and like put them absolutely everywhere. There is a lot of possibility here, but I way overdid it before, so I'm much more happy with this sort of like condensed version of her home. I will say though, if I had just a little bit more space, I would have expanded upon the idea of using the mannequins to display different dresses. When she's little, Eudora, Tiana's mother, creates a ton of dresses for her, and that's kind of like how the relationship is presumably established, that Eudora and Eli kind of know one another because she makes dresses for his daughter, and they're all over the room. There's like these little mannequins that are all over that show off all of her dresses, and they're not like tucked away in a closet. They're very much on display. So I wanted to carry some of that over even into her adult life, that she might have a few mannequins in her room and she might display some of her favorite princess dresses or trade them out on occasion when it's a new season, new dress kind of an idea. So I put a couple in here. I would have loved to do a few more. I actually think the game limits how many mannequins can go in a particular build. The game, my understanding is, kind of thinks that mannequins are Sims because you can decorate them and put clothes on them and everything. They're sort of coded in a similar fashion as the way that I've like read and understand this to be. So believe it or not, you are actually limited to how many mannequins you can have on a given lot. And if you're ever having problems with a lot and you have lots of mannequins, I promise you that might be why. I have had so many crashes and things that happen because of mannequins. Sometimes a common glitch that still occurs to this day is if you try to transfer over a room on the gallery or a lot on the gallery that has mannequins in it, sometimes it will crash your game. And one new one that I discovered while building this is that if you try to use the pool mod on mannequins, it will crash your game. And I made the mistake of not only doing the conservatory, some hallway spaces, some bathrooms, but almost all of Lottie's bedroom, and then using tool mod to try to move up that mannequin and put it flush on the platform underneath it. My game crashed, and you know I didn't save. So I lost like 2.5 hours of building and decorating the second floor of this mansion, only to have to go back in and try to remember everything and do it again. It actually came out better the second time, and I did remember everything, but needless to say, 2 hours that I did not need to waste doing something like that. So don't make the same mistake as me. Do not try to use the tool mod on mannequins. It doesn't work. I will be going in to create a sim and decorating those and giving them some really beautiful pink, lavish ballroom dresses, things that hopefully kind of resemble some of the ones that she had in her earlier years. They're not included in the video today, unfortunately, but when I do end up eventually doing some kind of a tour video for New Willow Creek, I will be showing things like that off. So those are things you can look forward to in the future. The remainder of the video is basically going to be all bedrooms on this second floor. The blue one is Eli LaBeouf's room. It's very simple. It's using a lot of that paired over furniture from before. It also has an ensuite bathroom that is not as large or as pink as Lottie's, but still very important and necessary for something of like this size and this mansion sort of feel. I also did one larger guest suite on this floor. It's brown. It has its own seating dining area. It has its own massive fireplace and a whole set of furniture, like living room style, in that room. So it ends up being pretty much as big as Lottie's room, but more organically designed for the idea of having guests over and giving them a space that has basically everything that they would need other than a bathroom. I opted for like the full sitting area instead of doing a bathroom on that side. It also has the balcony that comes off of the front of the home, whereas Eli's bedroom has the balcony that comes off of the far left side of the home and wraps around the entire bedroom. You could put seating out there. You could definitely expand on this. It wasn't really shown in the movie, so I didn't do any of that, but you definitely could. As far as what's coming up next for the Disney Save, I am doing some actual true renovations. So there is a neighborhood that is pretty much all Princess and the Frog. This is the neighborhood that has Tiana's Palace. It has the Crown Jewel, which is the mock fake restaurant that is Dr. Facilier's version of Tiana's Palace. And it also has Duke's Cafe, the little restaurant that Tiana works at in the beginning of the film. I'm going to be going over that neighborhood and editing some of those lots and just fixing them a little bit. Tiana's Palace is getting edited slightly just to resemble some of the colors and the way that the floor plan is sort of designed according to Dreamlight Valley. And then I'm also going to be editing Duke's, because when I rewatched the film, I realized that I could do a little bit better on keeping it accurate for Duke's and also aging it down a little bit. Duke's is also attached to presumably an apartment complex of some kind, and now that we have multi-lot typing, I may be able to work that out in some regard. I'm not quite sure because it's technically a restaurant and it has like a full menu and staff that are already pre-decorated, and I don't really want to get into editing that or changing the menu or worrying about too much of that stuff, but I am going to be making some changes. So none of those in and of themselves are going to be enough content to put out individual videos, so don't expect to see those in the form of new videos, but I am putting them together in like a compilation video where I show lots of little edits to pre-existing lots so you guys can see some of the changes I'm going to be making. But the last lot in that neighborhood is actually The Fallen Rose, which is a Beauty and the Beast library that's inspired by Beast Castle and has lots of books that were donated to the community from Belle. That lot is getting taken out of Willow Creek. It is not getting removed from the Disney Save, but it is getting taken out. I'm moving it to Hempford-on-Bagley. It might get some changes made to it, but I actually really love that lot. I've gone over it recently and looked at it, and it's kind of perfect. You probably won't be shocked to know that Beauty and the Beast is getting removed from Willow Creek. So the next build for the Disney Save is a brand new Princess and the Frog inspired lot that's going on where that lot previously was in that little commercial area. I won't spoil what that lot is, but I'll tell you that it is theme park inspired and less film inspired. It's going to be a fun one. So that's probably what you can expect to see next in terms of like the lineup of movies. It's going to take me a little bit of time. These mansions have been very heavy on me, as you can see from the hours and hours of footage that I have put out for you guys. But even when I put out these little like 1 hour, 2 hour long videos, the build time on the Bouff Mansion was probably somewhere close to 12-13 hours. It was days and days of work, and I had to really push myself to get through this in a timely manner. I'm glad that I did though. Other than the lot that's coming up next, these two mansions were probably some of the bigger changes and the bigger things that were coming to this world. A lot of the things that are coming from this point forward are going to be a little bit more on the small side and mostly commercial, but they're not going to be like these multi-story mansions that take years and years to decorate, meaning that for the most part, the bulk of the work for New Willow Creek is pretty much behind me, although it will be like a couple new lots and things to come. So we're definitely not out of here for a little while. I do hope that you guys have been enjoying the Willow Creek content and that you like all of the changes that I've been making. Do not worry about Beauty and the Beast, by the way. Everything is going to make sense and everything's getting moved into Hempford-on-Bagley, and you're going to love it so much more when everything gets changed over. It's going to just flow and work a lot better, and Princess and the Frog gets more of a spotlight. So if you're as big of a fan of the film as I am, you're going to love some of the new things that are getting added to Willow Creek in place of that are pretty much all going to be Princess and the Frog inspired, especially because we have some new lot types and things that were not available when I originally did Willow Creek, and somebody did leave a comment in a previous video expressing that a particular lot type should be used in this world, and if you were that commenter, I'm definitely planning something with the new lot type, so it'll all be good. You guys are going to love it. To close out the video today, that library and office that I mentioned, this is all kind of for Eli. Obviously Lottie reads though. Obviously she would come up here and read a little book in the library, so we definitely could design the space for both of them. And I did replace the desk in Eli's room. I originally was using the one from Life and Death that was very beautiful and had like gold trimming on it and everything, but was a little bit too modern for for the rest of the feel of the mansion. So if you hated that desk in his room, don't worry, I did fix it, and I matched it with the one upstairs in his office that works a lot better for the time period. One thing I really didn't include in the video, but I didn't forget, I just didn't film a lot of this, was that they do have a cat and a dog. And so I needed to put some like cat beds around, especially in Lottie's room. The cat seemingly spends time in her room. The dog seems a little bit older. He needs a bed somewhere, probably on the bottom floor, so he doesn't have to go up and down the stairs, and some feeding bowls and things. Maybe outside on the patio, maybe a little bit in the kitchen or the conservatory. I added that stuff later. This top floor also includes those two teeny tiny bedrooms in comparison to everything else in this home that I would call the maid and butler suite, but could also have the wall in the middle torn down to make a larger bedroom on the third floor. There is also a bathroom on that floor. You could use them as guest suites also. The possibilities are endless. Overall, the entire home functions a lot better. The floor plan makes so much more sense. They have everything here that you could possibly need or imagine for a house of this size. Way more than anybody ever needs, really, but even more than like Tiana's mansion in terms of different rooms, different themes, but still a lot of the same sort of similar ideas. Multiple seating rooms, ballroom, that kind of a thing. And all of that being said, that is the new Bouff mansion. Let me know what you thought of it down in the comment section below. I hope you guys love it as much as I do. Did I do better than the last time? If you've been watching me since the beginning, I'm almost tempted to take down the video of the original one because the thought of it makes me cringe in comparison to this one. They are just night and day in my opinion. But you guys let me know what your thoughts are of everything down below. And if you would like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I will talk to you all in the next one.